Welcome, Beverly Glenn-Copeland. Welcome, Jeremy Dutcher. Such a pleasure, such a highlight to speak with both of you. I'm just feeling all fanboyish over here, so bear with me. Mainly because I appreciate your work and admire your work so much. It, like I said before, music that hits my heart and soul. I'm a big fan. Played you many times on both my shows on CBC Radio, and yeah, it's amazing to have this opportunity to chat with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to speak about a few things, and community is going to come in and out of it. I love an organic, flowing conversation. So if you see the chance to bring up that theme, by all means. Beverly, I wanted to start with you. You once said that your creative community consisted of trees, bears, and rabbits, the natural world. That was my companion. I'm curious, what was the biggest lesson, or what were the lessons you learned from that community, Beverly?
That's a difficult question. I guess the main thing that I learned was that they were sacred beings. That they're sacred beings, and they have a lot to teach us, right? Yeah. That's the main thing.
And when you say you have a lot to teach, what did you make any realizations? Did you learn something? Because I mean, the thing about life and about doing music and about doing journalism is that we're always learning, which is why we love what we do so much. Was there anything in particular that you learned or took away from that and said, "Wow, this is going to be part of my life philosophy or my creative philosophy"?
I don't think it was that so much. I have always been a person, since I was a child, I asked my parents not to kill anything, not to kill any bugs, not to kill anything. And so I was always putting things out, and they actually went along with that. It was really quite amazing because it wasn't in their cultural background, right?
Right.
So any animal being, any people, animals, not really a lot of difference, really. It's just, they're sacred to me. So it was a chance for me mostly just to be with those that I consider to be sacred.
Right. Jeremy, in terms of your creative community,
Glenn, first, I just have to say, I'm so glad that you've come to our territory in the East Coast, because your philosophy around the animal life is exactly how Indigenous people of the East Coast see our natural world, and it's embedded into our language. We talk about these animals the same way that we talk about ourselves, and so it's I have to just echo exactly what you're saying, and just thank you for saying that, because it's so true. It's so important that we start to decentralize the supremacy of human beings in this whole narrative.
Yeah, I have to tell you, Jeremy, it wasn't until I came upon First Nations philosophies that I saw that in print and heard it from listening.
But you felt it.
I felt it, but yeah. There was nothing else that said that I came upon, right? Until I came upon, the First Nations here in Canada and elsewhere who were talking about those things.
I feel so lucky and and grateful all the time that I kind of come from this lineage of people that saw the world not as something to be extracted from or used, but something to be in relationship with. And I'm so grateful for that every day, because it just changes the way you orient yourself in the world, I think.
Totally understand that. Totally.
Yeah, Beverly, sorry if I put you on the spot, but I read a lot about you before when preparing for this, and I just thought that was such a beautiful quote and comment, and I really wanted to sort of get into your head. So I appreciate
you. Put me in the spot. Don't worry, Errol. You're not. And even if you do, this is a conversation, right? 100%. So that's fine. It's not like I have to be perfectly know everything. So what if I don't know? I can ask Jeremy, you might know. I can ask you, you might know. Not to mention our audience, they might know. Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nice glasses, by the way. I love the color.
Oh, thank you. I bought these specifically to dull out, to be, I bought these for, I think it was $3.50 in order to
wow.
In order to stop blue light. That was the only purpose of these glasses. And everybody has said, oh, they're just wonderful. They're just wonderful. Whatever. Thinking, these can't take any, I can't put anything in these things. They're just plastic things, right? So,
yeah.
That's the way it goes. Anyway, I'm glad you liked them.
We're the spectacle crew. I like this. All of us. We gotta
go on. Jeremy, speaking of community, what did your creative community look like? Oh, and what did you get from? How did they inspire you, and how did they inspire your life and creative philosophy?
Well, I guess I can't speak about my creative community as a monolith or as one thing, right? Yeah, it's divergent and evolving all the time. You know, I think in the ways that I was making music as a young person in the home, or within a community like setting among Wolastoqiyik. That was very different from then when I went to and I know Glenn and I share this experience of being within those like classical music institution spaces and trying to sort ourselves out through that, through that space and try to find our voice in that. It was difficult. It was very difficult. And so, it was educational and I learned a lot. But I also wanted to hold that knowledge that I came up with as well. And so it was always straddling these two kind of worlds of honoring our traditional songs because they're so beautiful. And that's not to discount any beauty of the Western tradition or European classical music. I think obviously that those virtues are well extolled in the world. But I just for me, I wanted to elevate our music in that way and show how beautiful it was. And that was the whole sort of purpose of the work. And to also reflect back into my own community, other young Wolastoqiyik people, to say that like, look how beautiful we are, look how beautiful our songs are, and look at how beautiful our language is, and all of these elements. And I guess that was really like community kind of sits at the core of what I do. And something, but it's funny because it's not even, it is like the literal community of those around us that are living and speaking, but it's also in both directions. It's those who came before, honoring them, and also clearing a path and speaking to and sending our voice out to those who are yet to come. And so there's that duality of direction, and then we stand in this present moment. Yeah, I think that's something that has always inspired me about Glenn's work as well, is that thought or care for those who are coming, and creating and speaking sound into a futurative space.
Right.
That's so inspiring to me.
This is just listening to you carefully there, where you said the duality and, one foot forward, one step back, it's like a heavy responsibility, like earlier I talked to you about, the shows that I host, and there's a very, very strong mandate to really amplify these voices from diverse communities, non-white communities, indigenous communities, because like I said, they don't get the love. And I take that seriously. I mean, whether it's going into the storytelling behind it, and with that comes responsibility. Like sometimes, do you feel like overwhelmed by the responsibility? I'm sure it charges you and energizes you, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm kind of curious.
Oh, do you mean me or Glenn?
Jeremy, you,
me.
sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry. Do I feel, I mean, there's a sense of I don't have kids. I don't have offspring, so there's a sense of responsibility. Yeah, I guess I gotta have one thing in my life that I'm responsible for, which is like telling stories in a good way and singing songs in a good way.
You don't do it in a good way. You do it in a stellar, spectacular way, Jeremy. Your music makes me cry, man, for real.
Oh yeah. Well,
and Beverly's too. There's like the tenderness and the soul, and there's history, and I live for that.
And so for me, the responsibility exists in relationship to my community primarily, which is to say that like those songs, although I open through the encouragement of my elders like Maggie Paul and people that really encouraged this work, they were like, go and share it with people, go and send it out into the world. And so I did. I offered it, and I'm so glad it was received by people outside of our community. But always the reason for that work was to reflect beauty back to the young people and back to all of the people, and really and use this as a kernel to say that like it's all of us too, right? Because it's even though I'm telling a very specific story about a very particular nation on the East Coast and our traditional songs and our language and all this kind of stuff, we all have that story of recovering and bringing something forward that we think is so precious and beautiful.
Yeah.
And we just want to share it with the world. And so that is, I guess I see that as a responsibility of holding that beautiful thing in just the right way, so that other people can see how it's beautiful and also see that beauty within how they want to create in this world.
It's such a good point. I love how this chat is going, because I mean, I live for organic conversations as opposed to like question answer. And you said something that segues beautifully into something that I read about Beverly in, I think it was the New Yorker or the Atlantic, and the writer said, only now does Beverly Glenn-Copeland understand that he was making music for a generation of listeners who had yet to be born. And I read that and I was like, that is so heavy. Beverly, how did you respond when you read something like that?
Well, I had actually had a conversation and sort of it explained that, but years ago, really, in the 1980s, I came across this prediction that a generation was going to be born, but they didn't say when, right? That would represent a huge step in human growth, from out of our teenagehood to our adulthood. This is what this is said. And I was like looking for it, because it didn't say when. And we always think in time, it's like, oh, that means next week or next that's how we've been trained to think about time, right? Anyways, but it didn't happen until the last 10 years. 10, 15 years. Suddenly I saw, and well, I'll say the last 20 years or so, suddenly I saw being born, or they were like teenagers in their 20s or so. Now they're in their 40s and they're having the crystal children, but suddenly there was this group of beings who thought in terms of community. And they thought in terms of how to care for the earth. And they were like communicating with each other because we had, the technology had progressed to the point where even though they were worlds apart, they could like be talking to me. They were creating community in other countries than themselves, as well as within their own countries, right? And the whole orientation was this sacredness of the earth, the sacredness of the earth, right? And it's and all of its creatures, ourselves included. Right? So I mean, I was just, when I finally saw them, I was so, I mean, it makes me cry.
You're right.
About it right now, it makes me cry because we so need to grow up.
Oh,
if we don't grow up, we will cause the earth to suffer more and more and more, right?
Yeah.
And
Totally.
she's already doing her best she's trying really hard despite us, right?
Yeah.
To try to bring things, to try to nourish things, to try to bring things. Things are happening in the earth that we are not even aware of, where the earth herself is already going, oh my gosh, this is an emergency. We got to, we have to
hemorrhaging.
Yeah, right. So
Hemorrhaging,
that's really where that came from for me.
I love that, and thank you for sharing that. And because in this time, Beverly and Jeremy, it's so hard to just stay positive, and it's so interesting that you saw that happening, where all we see in the media is tribalism and war and borders and fucking walls going up, and
but this is
like,
exactly
honestly believe the pandemic has brought out the worst in people, man, like the worst in people, and so to hear this is like it's hitting me hard too, Jeremy.
But it's also brought out the best. It's also brought out the best in us, right?
Yeah. And this is why we need to talk to our elders, right? Because they see the big time. They see the change that we've lived through, and not just this moment of war and of strife, and because that's always been there through the human story. It's always been there, and we can keep working to try to eradicate it, or try to just tell a better story, because I think it's also where we point the camera, right? So we could keep pointing the camera in the war place and the strife place, but also, as Glenn was saying, this time has really brought a lot of beauty. And I want to hear more about the Crystal Children too, because they're coming together, like you were saying, in a way they're coming together using online platforms and communicating in a way that's even, it's kind of tenfold now. It's taking off. So I think.
Yeah. Sorry, Jeremy. Yeah, I was going to ask you to break down. I've never heard that phrase before. Tell us, Beverly.
The Crystal Children are the ones who are saying to world leaders, na 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 na. Those are the Crystal Children. They're called the Crystal Children, right? I mean, these are just words that we use to try to describe, but they're standing on the shoulders of the ones who showed up 25 years ago, right? Those folks are having these babies being born to them who represent another step forward again, who do not have no fear about saying when they're 10 years old, you need to get this together, to some head of state. Right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. They're speaking. They have a it's as though they all waited to come until the time was so critical, because it's not like, as Jeremy says, we've always had wars and things like this, but this is the first time when we could destroy the earth herself through these wars.
Yeah.
The very first time. And it's like they waited to be born until that time came, because we would not hear them unless we were this desperate.
That's it.
Right.
That's it. Yeah.
Always coming through when we're on the precipice, there's always something that the hand comes out. Right. We never learn. Let's move into some music here. Beverly, I've read the story about the Japanese record collector many times. You've told that story many times. What I wanted to know is, when he contacted you, like, what did he say to you? Like I want to know what he told you in terms of why he liked your music so much, why it impacted him in like what was his response to hearing your music, for him to reach out over the continents, over the oceans, and say, do you have any more of your cassettes left?
Well, he doesn't. He's still a friend of mine. We're still in contact, right? We write each other probably twice a year and catch up, right? Because of course I got to meet him, right?
Right.
Person, right? But when he first reached out, he because his English was very limited, he just said, could you send me? That's all he said. Could you send me, these cassettes? And of course, I didn't even know what the cassettes were. Only my wife knew where the cassettes were, because she has the kind of mind where she keeps track of things, right? And she knows things. she's also a brilliant everything you can think of. I mean, a brilliant visual artist, a brilliant dancer, a brilliant singer, a brilliant poet, a brilliant writer, and she's getting acknowledgement in all these fields. And by the way, she says hello to you, Jeremy. She says hello to you.
Hello,
okay.
Elizabeth.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, okay. So now I've gotten lost on all this. Oh yeah. So that's all he said. He just said, send me. And so my wife said, here they are. And so I sent them to him. And then all he said was, he sent back a letter that said, I have sold all these, I think, in 1 week. And and I just went, duh. 30. I mean, I didn't sell but 30 cassettes in 3 or 4 months of trying to sell them, period. I only sold 30 cassettes, period. Right.
Right.
And he sold 30 cassettes in 1 week. And then he got back to me, and said, could you send more? Right. And there was another company that had cottoned onto it and they asked for some as well. Right. But what I didn't know was that he had a website that was internationally watched. He was considered to be an expert around things around music that he considered to be wonderful music that had never been found. Yeah. So that's what happened. He kicked it off.
I love too that like between Glenn and I, like our music has kind of lived outside of who we created it for as well.
Yeah.
Or like our community itself, it ripples outward. And I think it's such a beauty about your work, Glenn, because it's traveled the whole world, these songs that you created. It's so beautiful.
Jeremy, have I told you that, I took my manager, one time we were walking up, we were in Europe at the time. No, we were in Montreal at the time. And and he's a big time manager, right? Internationally, but he'd never heard of you, right? And we walked past this place and I saw that you were playing. I said, I don't care what it is we were about to do, you're coming with me right now. So we went we bought a ticket on the spot. You were already playing, right? We bought a ticket, 2 tickets, we went in, right? And sat down. His jaw dropped to the floor. And he said, when we came out, he said, that was amazing.
Right.
Who is this person? I said, okay, good luck, good. Now you know.
I think the whole world reacted that way.
And not understanding a word. And that's why it's kind of comparable, right, to what happened in Japan for you, Glenn, because they really got hot to what you were doing, even though maybe the that understanding was not there. Same thing with what I was doing as well. It's the music is cutting way, way deeper than language.
Yeah, that's right. The language, because I listen to things in languages that I don't understand, and it absolutely makes me cry, right? Because it's so beautiful, right?
With my show all the time, we just played a group from Rwanda called the Good Ones, and the interesting thing about that group is that they came out of the genocide, the Who, right? Yes. And this group has 3 members of the warring tribes in the same group, and a lot of thumb piano stuff going on, but just the most tender, delicate like music that y'all are making, and I was just like, I don't understand a word. I don't need to understand a word. A lot of times people are shocked. They go, you know so much about music from all over the world. Do you play any instrument? And I'm like, no. But I think that works to our favors, those of us, because we come at it more with an open heart and an open mind, because we're not going, what chord is he doing? Or, it doesn't, like just like Beverly, when I hear your music, it's like this open heart, man. It's just like, come on in here, that's what I feel with your music, Jeremy, I honestly mean that. Jeremy, to stay with that theme of response, when you heard Beverly Glenn-Copeland's music for the first time, how did you respond? We've talked about how we responded to your music.
I wept.
Wow.
Yeah, I think definitely the first song I ever heard was Ever Knew. Yeah, I would really, if folks haven't heard that song before, please just go put it on in your living room and
now
just dance and remember the child in everybody and walk with them, you know, and take their hand it was just such a beautiful expression of something that, like you were saying, Glenn, earlier, like that I know, but I never heard it expressed before, you know, and just the sense of welcoming every moment. It really put me aside. And that's just like, that's not even considering the music and the voice and all that, but that's just the heart content of what was there.
Yeah.
And then also, you know, layer on top of that a musical genius. It's just it's a beautiful combination. But it wasn't until I started to dig into I started to learn some of the songs that really changed it for me. Like sitting down and getting my hands around Ghost House. And
talk about that. I was going to ask you about that, Jeremy.
Well, I was approached to be part of a compilation of re-recording of Glenn's music. And,
Reimagined, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's called Reimagined. And there's so many heavy hitters on there and beautiful renditions. And so I was very humbled to just be a part of it. And, you know, I recorded a very simple track. I was just me and a piano and just trying to do justice to this amazing song, because it's like, and almost like, I almost feel embarrassed a little bit because I don't feel like I hit it quite, you know, because there's that up-tempo section at the
you hit it.
Oh,
I listened to it and like I'd never heard it before.
Oh, you know, but isn't that that was my goal, the reimagine, the taking those seeds and growing a different plant, you know, but such beautiful seeds they were. Oh my goodness, I was such an honor to dig into that song.
Incredible song. Jeremy, just staying with that, like you know, you mentioned the very kind of visceral response you had, emotional response you had to his music the first time you heard it. How then, when you have so much admiration for someone, like I would feel so intimidated to cover their music. How did you approach it? Besides having, as we spoke before, you guys have such an open hearts and open minds and open souls. Like, how did you approach it?
Yeah, well, thankfully, when I had sat down to think about covering that song or looking at Glenn's music, I had met Glenn before, and I had known his convivial spirit and just the lightness and beauty with which he moves. And so I wasn't intimidated in that way, just because I knew that there was a lot of mutual respect and love between us. And so I wanted, but I think, you know, a song's a puzzle, you know, and you gotta take it apart and put the pieces back together in your own way. And yeah, I guess I was never intimidated, just because that was never the vibe between us. You know, when I sit down to cover somebody I don't know or I've never met, maybe that's a different conversation. But I just remember particularly being like, well, you know, whatever I offer, I think Glenn's gonna receive it in how it was offered, you know, which is within the spirit of admiration and of mutual respect.
And Glenn, when you heard it, how did you hear this? Did you? I'm sure you heard it with New Year's. I'm curious how you heard it and what you thought Jeremy brought to it, and because earlier you said you hit it, right? Tell us.
You know, it's an interesting thing, because you have to understand, I don't really think in terms of I don't know where songs come from. You know? I mean, like some people sit down and they create something with a great deal of knowledge and understanding, because they've studied and studied and studied. I studied and studied and studied classical music, yeah, but I was not, I mean, I could not, I was really, in many ways, I was really a very poor student, because like I couldn't sit down and sight read stuff, right? I couldn't do that, right? My father was an incredible pianist, but I couldn't do it. It was just not in my brain waves or something. And so I would listen to music that I supposedly wrote, and I know that it was sent through me. It was just sent through me, because the universe is really the great creator. And the universe decides, you know, this is my idea, sends to each of us what it is at the aspect of creation that we are most attuned to, right? That's how I see it, right? That's how I see it. So when I listened to Jeremy's piece, it was as though I never heard it before, ever.
It's an ultimate compliment when someone covers your music.
It was stunning. Stunning. That's the only thing I could say. And it was like I heard it as though, did I actually have anything to do with this piece? Look at what this man has done to this. Wow.
Yeah.
It was like because I know his musicianship is on a very high level. So thankfully he's able to receive all kinds of things that are above my abilities. However,
Nice glasses.
But anyway, it was that's how I experienced it. I experienced it as though I hadn't even, I knew I quote supposedly written it, but it was just it was in a whole nother category of goods. That's how I felt.
I'm actually playing it on my Saturday show, so that we can, because I'm plugging the event on Tuesday. So I was like, none of them are from Toronto, but I'm hosting the show, so let's do it. And we are.
I think that means we both get the royalties there, Glenn. Right on.
Okay, I love it. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had some interesting chats with musicians during the pandemic, either for articles I've been commissioned to write or just chats. And many of them have talked to me about revelations that they've had, or realizations, if you want, learning the importance of stillness. Many of them have talked about. Bahamas, who lives out in the East Coast now, love his music, love his songwriting. He talked about the importance of boredom. And I never heard someone say that, or I hadn't heard someone say that before. A lot of people, like we said at the beginning of this chat, y'all were like, yes, Errol, there are wars, there are, we have this huge movement, this refugee crisis that's unprecedented. We have tribalism, people going at each other, but there's also beauty, and so in terms of the pandemic, yes, there were, like people lost jobs, lives were devastated, mental health issues, but there was also like a lot of beauty. A lot of people learned like the importance of stopping and stillness and boredom and creativity. I'd like to ask each of you guys if there's something that you learned or revealed itself to you during these last 2 years, which were particularly hard on musicians, because the ability to go into recording studios or to tour. Please,
Jared, go first.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Okay. I'm here to do what my elders tell me. So you tell me to go first, and I'll go first. For real, that's an important value. Of course, I would let you speak first, but if you want to hear from me, I'll be happy to speak. Wow. I mean, what a question, and how to summate this time in a way that makes sense to anybody, because we've all been living in our little plastic bubbles. Yeah, which is nothing new for Glenn. If you've seen the In the Making documentary, I think about your plastic studio space and everything's all the time. Anyway, sorry, I digress. No, I hope your editors can edit this out, because I want to seem like I'm doing a proper job at this question and giving it the respect it deserves.
Thank you.
Because it's been a really hard, it's been a hard time, for a lot of people, and life has just changed, and it's been different. And to be attuned to that, and not to, well, I think, for a lot of us, we were really trying to keep normalcy for a while and keep what made sense to us, but I think as this wore on, I think we realized that, no, this is a time for change and transformation. And I tried to sit in that possibility rather than the fear of everything that could be. Because just for, our small little artist world, we can't do the same things you did. We're not touring, we're not showing anymore. We're not doing those things that made sense to us. And I almost ache for the people that were just, on the precipice of coming out into the artistic world. Or like, for example, even Glenn, like you were just about to world tour it, and then the world shut down. So I think, for me, I was in this kind of space where I was tired after the end of doing the end of the cycle for Wavelength Winter. I was so tired. I just needed to rest. And so, I took the rest I needed in this time, and I put music aside, and I actually, mainly focused on our language, because I'll just do a quick little plug for my mother, who's building a language school.
Wow.
It's the first Wavelength immersion program. So we've been kind of all hands on deck and trying to help her out realize this big, beautiful vision, just because it's so important for us to have a space of immersion. Like we just have never had that. When I was growing up, and like I guess community is about working for the ones you'll never meet, and I guess that's what we're doing with this language school, and that's kind of been taking my focus. So I guess being able to pivot and be flexible was a big lesson for me in this time, and to understand that the work may not have been doing shows and doing tours, that the work may be much bigger than that. Creating institutions and creating cultural change. Music is a vessel, and you can speak to a lot of people that way. And so I guess it's been a transformation of where I see that fitting into my life, and trying to honor all the other Jeremys and all the other beautiful strands that I try to like weave together in what I'm trying to call a life and an artistic practice. Maybe I'll leave it there.
No, beautiful. Beverly?
Well, it's very interesting because what happened to me was because of that tour that was that I couldn't go on just because of the pandemic. I came back from a tour, and I was about to go off on a really much bigger tour.
Right.
When the pandemic hit, and my wife and I had sold our house already before the pandemic hit.
I read that, yes.
Yeah, so we had to honor that. So in the honoring of it, we then found ourselves to be without a home, because you can't go looking for a house during the pandemic. I mean, people weren't even hardly wearing masks yet. And so, nobody, I didn't want to be in anyone's home, where I could get it. And they didn't want me to be in their home in case I was giving it to them, right?
Yeah.
So for 9 months, we had to move. In the space of 9 months, we had to move in our entire home 3 times.
Wow.
Well, what happened was, because of that, both my wife and myself, we lost our health. And because moving, other than the death of a child who was young, is the most stressful thing that you can go through on the charts of stress. And everybody, the doctors, everyone speaks of that, right? So both of us were so deeply affected on a physical level that we lost our health. And then we were isolated because it was, nearly impossible, whatever. But what has happened over the course of time is that we found community, even in isolation, of people who wanted to help us. Right?
That you probably didn't know.
No, they weren't people that we knew, because we had moved to a place where we had nothing to do with where we had been living. We had to move we sold our house in Sackville. We ended up having to move to Nova Scotia, and then and we knew no one. We didn't know anyone except for a couple of the members of Indigo Rising, which is the group that I've been playing with, right? And they live quite far away. And besides which, we were all suffering the same thing. We were trying to get vaccinated. We couldn't, I wasn't, because my health was so poor, I wasn't allowed to get vaccinated. My physician wouldn't let me get vaccinated for quite a long time, and blah, 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 and on and on and on. Well, what has happened now is both of us are so exhausted and so broken down. But suddenly, and not suddenly, but slowly, there is this huge community of people who are supporting us, helping us pack, helping us do this, bringing us food, on and on and on and on.
Wow.
And so we are actually experiencing on a personal level the absolute joy and the heart of community.
Community.
Right.
Yeah, of what community is. The heart is more important. The
Right.
heart of what community is. It's all about these other folks are coming from their heart.
Right.
And in most all communities, real communities, that's what has been happening down the centuries. It's only recently that we have been living in ways that didn't have to do with community. Last few hundred years or so, 300 years maybe, since we discovered, that we could make a lot of money by having steam engines and things like that, or whatever it was that happened, that brought that on, maybe the last 500 years. But before that, all of our ancestors everywhere in the entire earth lived communally.
Yeah.
And took care of each other. We wouldn't have survived as a race if that was not true. We can't run fast. We don't have claws worth talking about, and we ain't got no eye teeth.
Yeah.
So, like, how would we survive if not for the fact that those around us were figuring out ways to help, so that we could, back ourselves into caves, and once we figured out have fires, and then eventually the wolves that had been kicked out of their group, came begging at the door at the fire, and please, I need somebody who can be the elder. I'm used to elders. I'm used to there being a leader. Would you please be the leader, please? And and so we eventually had wolves as the beginning of dogs, right? That's how we survived. It was a communal effort, including with the wolves.
Yeah.
Mm.
Wow, you're giving me a lot to think about in terms of. I mean, I see what you're saying, Beverly, in terms of how community can materialize out of nowhere. Especially if you think like you're moving to a new place, nobody knows us, but the generosity of spirit and open hearts. But also, like, what's striking me about this conversation is, and what I'm going to sit with and walk away, thinking on going home and on my way home, is how you'll look forward. Like, you'll are just like, sorry, man. I don't know, just so it's so nice to talk to people who are so soulful, couldn't just think about themselves, like, I'm sorry, guys.
No apologies.
Like, both of you are talking about, making music for people who have yet to come. Like, I've not heard a musician ever say that, It's like, okay, I'm going to do it for the punk scene or the hip hop scene, and I'm going to do it for the chart, and I'm going to do it to move the tickets. And, here I am talking to two people who are talking about for people and communities yet to come. I'm sorry, that's heavy, man.
We find each other in this heaviness. We find each other, all these shards of light, and then we collect, and then we create something that's going to ripple out. It's all good, but we need to speak it, and we need to reaffirm it. And that's kind of where I'm growing.
Yeah.
is just being able to insist on love, to insist on kindness, and to insist on beauty, and not a superficial kind, but like a deep interpersonal and relational kind.
That comes through very, very clearly in your music. And that's why I knew this was going to be a special conversation. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to talk to my favorite musicians. There's, as I've gotten older, even before, like, I always gravitated to musicians with, like, that had that depth. There was like content, man. Content. It's not just a hook or a fucking great sing-along chorus is depth, man. There's serious depth in both your musics, man. You know, I'm speaking from the heart, you know. I hope you sense that, you know.
I have to tell you, on a personal level, I'm still learning a whole lot about how to love. I am learning a whole lot. I mean, I went through a period of time where I was extremely on and very when my career first started to really happen, I went into this strange place with my wife where it was like some negative devil ego came up, right? And it was like, and I wasn't feeling that for the rest of the world or anything, but somehow I played this deeper yuck that was filling my life out, right? And it's like, it's only been like, I've been really, really working hard. And I really hurt my wife. I really hurt her. And I have been working really hard to deepen my own understanding of heart and to deepen my own understanding of what it means to be kind, and to deepen my own understanding of to understand that there are things that we hold, all of us humans, we are not perfect beings, any of us, right? We're all learning as we go, right? And so it's like to forgive oneself, right? But at the same time to be working really hard to really bring up from the depths of one's being the confidence, because usually when you diss someone or you don't care for them properly, it's because you really don't have confidence, right? And when you don't have confidence, it shows itself in one of two ways. You either blow up, which is what I did, or you collapse, right? So I blew up on this personal level, right? But it's the same thing. It's lack of confidence. So to develop confidence in oneself, to understand what real confidence means. When we do that, is when we can do that as a human species, we will definitely change the destiny of everything.
But it also goes with unlearning a lot too, and that's the work, right? Like the unlearning those systems which sought to put us in these particular kinds of spaces of being held and separating each other, you know. It's really unlearning all of those harmful and survival tools and not inflicting them on each other.
Right.
Yeah, that's the everyday lessons. Oh my goodness. And we couldn't escape it in this time. It was just sitting with us every day, you know. And so, you know, you're right. Like there's that collapsing or the
explosion.
Explosion. Hopefully we can find it's the middle path that I think might be the answer. Right. Yeah. But wow.
True confidence.
Yeah.
True
I mean it comes I don't, now that you say that, I'm like, I'm not there yet either. I like you know, I maybe I'm skeptical and wary of those who claim to be anywhere, you know, of or trying to speak from that deep place of knowledge, because I think it's the humility that is the true space of knowing that we don't know much. And I think
to be humble before the larger reality of the universe, that is that's the truth of it.
Right. But those moments of community, that's what humbles us.
Yes.
Because sometimes, you know,
that's right.
I always say, like, oh, you care for your community and your community is going to care for you. But I think sometimes it works the other way around as well, which is like your community cares for you, Glenn, and now you're part of that space. Now you're in.
Yeah.
The beautiful thing that came out of this chat, which we will wrap up quite soon because our time is coming to a close, unfortunately, is that you've given us, especially me, you inspire me to sort of redefine community, you know, especially it being, okay, this could be, you know, my lanes with eight homes in each lane, that's community. My community could be the global music community in Toronto. Like when we just did a special on Ukrainian music, and I reached out to a few musicians and they were like, here are all our contacts, here are our phone numbers. You've supported us over the years. Here are some people that you should reach out. I had no trouble putting that show together because community came together, right? So we see it in different places, but I think for me, the big takeaway is community that's to come, right? And maybe that's been short-sighted of me, and that's the beauty about speaking with you, that I'm learning something. But like so often we talk about, like earlier we said, okay, wars are in our face, walls are going up, the refugee crisis, movement of people, that's all in our face, tribalism. But you'll also talked in the beginning about kindness. That's there. And a lot of beauty came out of this pandemic. But I think what's also coming out of this conversation is community doesn't just mean, you know, the indigenous community or the Black community or the transgender or the gay community or the hip hop community. You know, it's just, for me, what struck me so hard and deeply is for the community that's to come. That to me is like, for me, I thank you for saying that.
Listen, we've all got ancestors. Everybody on this planet's got ancestors, and we're all going to be ancestors someday. So I think when we take a view of time in that way, and we think about how we're preparing the path and how we're clearing our shoulders so that they may be stepped on, you know.
Right. Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to see that, Jeremy.
Well, and Errol as well. Thank you so much for this, like, beautiful questions that brought out, like,
thank you. Oh,
some beautiful ideas.
This is, I mean, I'll be honest with you, like, I've interviewed so many people over the last 15, 20 years. And this is like one of the heaviest conversations I've had, in terms of like just so much soul and beauty and emotion. And I'm so thankful to you guys. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the last hour with me. I really do.
Oh, absolutely loved it.
I hope our paths cross sometimes. Sometime, you guys. I would love that. I'd love to see you guys.
Okay. Well, you know, I think I have a lot of hope that we are going to come to a place where we are functioning much better in the world. And when that's starting to happen already. And I mean, you know, as it happens, like then the possibilities of us being able to get together increase by a power of 24.
And, you know, prophecies have been spoken into this space already. So I'll just continue and say that, like, the transformation of the earth is happening on the East Coast. So Errol, you got to come out. You got to come out and hang out with us on the East, because that's where the work is happening.
You know, I lots of people have been telling me I haven't visited, and I would love to. And if I do, I hope I can connect with you, Jeremy.
Oh yeah. We'll all get together. I think that would be very lovely. We got half the colors of the world right here. So come on, this is amazing.
Jeremy, if I can get your contact info from Wavelength, will that be okay? Just to like keep in touch via email and stuff?
Of course, yeah. I'm not always the most prompt in response, but I'll get to you. Or I saw you on Twitter too. You always reach out there if you want to.
Yeah, they just plugged the event, so I'm just gonna respond to it and talk about what an amazing deep conversation it was, and what an honor it was to spend time with you guys. And Beverly, yes, we should be in contact, all of us, man. This was really, I loved every minute of it. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much, Errol. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
I love you.
Take good care, guys.
Take care.